Welcome you all for this third virtual math hangout session. Today the speaker is Vibha Vishwanath. She's 2014 pass out from our BSc, and hence forward she pursued a statistics from Mysore University, and today she's speaking on data science and machine learning aspects. So go ahead, Vibha.
Okay, hello everyone. So today I'll be speaking about an overview on data science. So everybody, has this idea of data science, but you're not really sure whether, it is what you're thinking or if it is something else. So one second, I'll start sharing my screen. Yeah. So what data science is actually, I'm going to give you an overview on that. I did work for a year in data science field. So yeah, here we go. So what is data science? So data science, if you Google it, you will get many different definitions on over the internet. So these are some definitions from the internet that I'm getting. So basically, data science is to do with you know different fields that are unified together. So you have machine learning. So for machine learning, you need to know a little bit of programming knowledge and stuff. And then if you need to know machine learning, you need to know like how or what machine learning is and what is the theory behind it. So where to use it. So for that, you'll require some statistics. So to do or to apply these, the most important thing that you'll require is data. So you have data and then you'll have to analyze the data before you apply these uh, concepts or tools. So for that, you need to have data. So data comes from information science and so on. So to sum it up, so data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses scientific methods, processes, algorithms, and systems to extract knowledge and insights from structured and unstructured data. So I'll go on forward. So this is a Venn diagram which you will find again on internet. So what it says is for you to know data science, yes, you need mathematics and statistics knowledge, you need some programming knowledge, and also you need some knowledge on the domain. So what do you mean by knowledge on domain is that say you have a problem statement where you need to find if a particular person who's applying for a loan may be a defaulter or not. So in that aspect, you need to know what are all the things that constitute a person as a defaulter, and what are all the things that you need to consider when giving a person a loan. So you need to have that much minimum knowledge. So that is domain knowledge. So most important, according to me, is the knowledge of mathematics or statistics with programming knowledge. Because if you want to be a freelance data scientist, you can't have domain knowledge of each and every domain that you're working. So domain knowledge, what I would say, is knowledge based on the problem that you're solving. So next, we can see that where all is data science used. So fraud and
Vibha, I want to interrupt
detection
you.
and
Vibha,
yeah,
uh, suppose you're
yeah,
working on data of, let's say, Big Bazaar, then
yeah.
knowledge of the Big Bazaar logistics is domain knowledge, right?
It would be more something like like market basket knowledge, or in general how shopping in a mall works, or shopping in a supermarket works. So that will be your domain
The
knowledge.
overall architecture.
Overall architecture. So you need to know the basics of it. You need not know, in depth or the knowledge what happens there. You just need to know the basics, like what happens in that particular industry. So that is what I mean by domain knowledge. So yeah, again, like uses of data science is it's pretty much used almost everywhere now because there's so much of data that is being generated every single day. So people want to analyze and people want to come up with new problems and solutions for those new problems and so on. So yeah, these are some of the most popular places where data science is used, like again for fraud detection and risk analysis, and then internet searches. Targeted advertising is another place that we use, and I have worked personally on that. And then you have website recommendation saying that, say, suppose you go buy a phone on one of the websites like Flipkart or Amazon, and then so it will start suggesting, a phone cover for you or a new pair of headphones and so on. And then you have speech recognition. So your Google Assistant, Alexa, and so on, Siri, all those. And then even in healthcare systems, data science is being applied. So I'm not very sure on how exactly they do in the healthcare system. So there are many more places where data science is used. So can you all see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see.
Yeah. So yeah, components of data science. So these are the major things that you use in data science or you do in data science. So the first component would be your data. So without data, there is no data science. So the next thing will be analysis of the data. So you need to understand the data in if you want to find solution for your problem. And then next is the different techniques that are used in solving the problem. So there are a lot of statistical and mathematical concepts and machine learning concepts that are used. And then in order to support the three components, you have technology also, which plays a major role in data science. So when you say data, so yeah, as I said, it's the most important element in any field. No matter which field you go, the more data you have, the more helpful it can be. So there are different types of data. So in general, you can categorize them into numerical, categorical, and time. But when it comes to data science, it is broadly classified into two um, structures of data. So one is this structured data, the other is unstructured data. So when you say structured data, it is the data that can be stored or in the form of a table. So it has a predefined schema, predefined columns and stuff. So some of the examples, or you can also say that it is the data that can be stored in a database. The examples for structured data is your MS Excel, your DBMS, JSON files, and so on. So the other type of data that you have is unstructured data. So unstructured data is the data that cannot be organized in a predefined format. So you may not be able to put it in the form of a table. So these kind of data is something like any text file that you have, like documents and everything. There is information in that. So that is unstructured. You have your emails, messages, and then from social media also you can gather a lot of information. Different websites. You also have videos and images which can be set as a format of unstructured data. So just because you have data doesn't mean that you can directly go into machine learning. So first thing is there is a major step which is data processing and data cleaning. So what do I mean by data processing is that, say for example, you have data that you receive in a particular format, but you need to convert it into a different format so that you will be able to work on it. Say you are getting in the form of JSON files. So JSON files are basically a paired like a key value pair file. So a key is something that is unique, but values need not be unique. So that one, maybe say you want to convert it into a Excel file. So that is called as processing of data. So there are different other methods or different things that come under processing. So another key aspect is cleaning of data. So what do I mean by cleaning of data is like, uh, say you get, say you have data which gives you information about temperature on some particular days, say 10 days, and then you have different entries in the temperature column. So some entries are in the form of degrees centigrade or Celsius, and some are in the form of Fahrenheit. So when in cleaning means that you want your column to have a particular format of data, or say you have some which are in the form of decimals, the numbers in the form of decimals, and some you just have like whole numbers. So you want to be having a particular format. So that is one part of data cleaning. Another thing could be that say you have about thousands of rows of data, and in some row a few columns may not be entered properly. They could be blank, which will affect the way you analyze your data, you build a machine learning model. So what you need to do is you need to see if you can either plug in values into those places, or if you need to remove the whole row itself, so it doesn't affect analysis or further model building things. So once you're done with data processing and data cleaning and everything, next we move on to analysis. So again, data analysis is a key step in solving the problem at hand. So first and foremost, you need to understand your data. The more you have good grip over your data, it becomes a little more easier for you to start solving the problem. So there are two ways in which you can analyze the data. Sometimes you use only one particular type, sometimes you use both of them. So you have data visualization and data exploration. So data visualization is just visually representing the data at hand. So you can use bar graphs, different dot plots, pie charts, so on. So data exploration is something where you find out statistics related to your data. So you can find the minimum, maximum, and all that. So this is with respect to numeric data, that you can find minimum, maximum, and so on. But if you have something like categorical data, you might want to look at how many times one particular category occurs. So the number of occurrence. So which is the highest, which is the lowest, and which would be more significant, and so on. So in the industry, the tools that you use is Excel, R, Tableau, Python, SQL, R, again SAS, and so on. So for some softwares are very good at data visualization, and some softwares are very good at data exploration. I mean, if you have thousands of rows, or if you have data that goes into hundreds of millions of rows, you cannot do it in Excel. Your Excel is simply going to crash, and it won't support.
Okay.
like bar graphs, dot plots, pie charts, and so on. Okay. Okay. So problem solving. So machine learning is widely used in data science. So first of all, what is machine learning? So machine learning is the ability to give your computer or your machine to learn. It is teaching your machine how to learn. So and when you're doing so, you want to be programming in with minimum lines of code, as minimum lines of code as possible. So one example that I can give you is, so here in the definition, what it says is that it is to give computers the capability to learn without being explicitly programmed. Say you have 10 conditions. So if you're familiar with if-else statements, so you will be writing if, say, condition 1, then do something. If condition 2, then do something else. So you're writing 10 different lines of code. Now imagine you have conditions, or you have multiple conditions. It's not just like, if X satisfies one condition, you're done. You have multiple variables, you have multiple factors affecting your problem. So in that case, you can't write a simple if statement, or you can't use for loops. That is where you need machine learning. So what it will do is, say you have 10 different conditions, and each condition has 3 sub conditions and so on. So machine learning takes into account all these conditions, and it says, okay, so if these conditions are satisfied, or if something happens like this, then this is going to be the result. So it has to learn all those conditions, and it has to give you a solution. So now in machine learning, there are two major parts. One is the training and testing part, the other is the application part. So when I say training testing part, so first what you do is you take one particular data set which you already have, meaning say historical data, say you have 10 years worth of data with regard to some domain. So now what you need to do is you take that and okay, maybe I will give you an example. Say you need to find out something about the temperature in summer over 10 years. So you're taking data only with respect to summer, and then you say you have some hypothesis saying that in summer it will not exceed 40 degrees centigrade. So what you're doing is you're training the machine. So when you say training process, the machine is actually building a model, or it is generating a function. So something like f of x. I'll give you a smaller example. So okay, so say suppose you want to find out if it is going to rain today or not. What are the different factors that are going to affect it? One is the temperature that is there today, the other is the humidity, and say speed. So you take these three things into account, and you have different scenarios where you have high humidity, low temperature, or high temperature and low humidity, and wind speed as being high or low. So you have different values there. So depending on certain conditions, your answer will be yes or no. So the yes or no is your answer. So when you're training, what you're doing is you're teaching the machine, okay, look, these are the conditions. You need to build a function over this so that you'll get answers like this. So here I've written saying that when you take a data set, you're splitting the data set into two smaller parts. So one will be your training set, which is actually like 70 to 80% of your data, and the remaining you're taking as a testing set. So your training and testing set should be in such a way that whatever data you have in the testing set should not be present in your training set. Meaning if you have certain conditions in your testing set, those conditions or those scenarios exactly should not be replicated in your training set. Otherwise, it's like you already have given the question and the answer to it. So it should be different. It should be able to take fresh data and it should give you the answer. So,
Hello, Vibha.
yeah.
Just I have a question. So you said that now you're going to first train the now machine. You give an example of rain.
Yeah.
Suppose after setting all those things, practically it doesn't rain. Means, do you have any probability of saying the chance of getting rain or not, something like that?
That is there. So I'll explain the answer to your question a little later.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. So first, what you do is, so when you train, you get a model. So in order to check if the model is a good one that you have generated or not, is where you test. So if you already have answers to the questions that you have, and you don't know whether the model is good or not, right? So that's why you have testing sets separately from your training set. So the next part, that is after you've generated the model, what you get is application of the model onto fresh data. So these are completely unknown questions or unknown scenarios where you plug in the values in, you have to get a particular answer. So to sum it up, you have a training testing part where you generate the model with the data that you already have. We call it as historical data. And then once you're satisfied with the model, what you get is something like what you have the final model, and then into the final model you are plugging in your fresh data that keeps generating. To answer your question, Rajiv, so yes, we usually have a percentage or a probability value that is associated with whether it is going to rain or not. So we call it as a threshold value, and in machine learning there's another concept called as confusion matrix, which actually tells you how much of the training and testing has worked, how much of it. So that is what you get it from the testing data. Only if all your answers match from the testing data set with the original values, or if some percentage matches, that is when you're going to take the model for application level. So if you get right answers only 3 out of 10 and 7 are wrong answers, then you're going to scrap the model, you're going to retrain, and you're going to get it. So actually you want to get as good as a model as possible, and the answers that you are getting are not in terms of yes and no exactly, it's in terms of probability. So you keep saying that if the final value that you get has some probability, it is either associated with yes or it is associated with no. I hope I'm cleared your doubt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So there are different machine learning approaches. So depending on your problem, so you may have heard about these different approaches. It's like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, semi-supervised learning, reinforcement learning. There's also self-learning and so on. So, but the most popular ones that I have seen is supervised and unsupervised learning. So I'm going to talk mainly about these two. So what supervised learning is that it's a machine learning concept where you have defined input and output examples. So like I said, in case of you're checking whether it's going to rain today or not, your inputs are the temperature you have, the humidity, and the wind speed. Your output example is yes or no. So like that you have different points. So you train and then you're getting the answer. So another example for it is time taken to travel from point A to point B. So what could be the conditions here is that the route that you take, the amount of traffic that you have, what is the time of the day in which you're traveling, and so on. So these are again, your different conditions. So you have different inputs, and the output is the time that you actually take to travel. So so your supervised learning is so this concept is used for regression and classification based problems. Again, there are many different algorithms which comes under supervised learning, and some of them are linear and logistic regression, and you have Naive-Bayes model, and then you have SVM, which is support vector machine, and there are many more. So I have worked on logistic regression models. So logistic regression model is again used for so classification doesn't necessarily mean that you have just two categories to classify it into. It could be n categories also. So say for example, you are a employment agency and you get applications of people and you want to classify them in or categorize them into different ways. So one type of category could be like, the the applicant could be a fresher, or he has some experience, say like 2 to 5 years experience, and he's a little more experienced, say like 5 to 10 years of experience, or somebody who has a lot of experience and is looking to apply for a new job. So that is one example for multi-class classification, as we call it. So next, we have unsupervised learning. So what unsupervised learning does is that here you do not have any input-output examples for the machine. So you just have your data which you feed it, and the machine has to try and recognize some patterns that you may not be able to see, or even you may be able to see it. So it has to recognize the patterns on its own, or it has to be able to classify the data into smaller clusters. One thing I want to tell here is there is a difference between classifying the data into different categories and classifying the data into different clusters. So what happens in cluster is that you have group of points or data points, together as clusters. So you might have different clusters here. I'll give you an example for it also. So what are the different unsupervised learning algorithms that you have is you have neural networks, k-means clustering, and anomaly detection. So neural networks is an algorithm where you have one data point is mapped to n number of other data points. So each data point that you have will have different maps to it. So one example for this is like, say suppose you take the word write. So what are the different forms in which you will come across that base word write? Is it writing, written, wrote, and so on? Or say present, it will be like present or presented, presents, and so on. So that is where one word is mapped to many other words. So k-means clustering is similar to it, but then say you want to classify a particular new point into one cluster, is like you will check the mean or the distance from one particular data point to another. Okay, maybe I'll just skip it. So anomaly detection is something like, say suppose you are every month you have some expenditure of say X amount. Now suddenly one particular month your bank alerts you saying that 5 times amount of that has been withdrawn from your account. So an anomaly, that is something that is out of the normal pattern that you follow. So that is anomaly detection. So yeah, so example like fraud detection and detection of emotions from a sentence. So means what, say suppose a sentence could be a good emotion or a bad emotion. So a sentence could be it could be something that is happy, or something that is sad, something that's funny, or something that points to anger and so on.
Vibha, I think
So
I can give Vibha.
yeah,
I can give an
yeah,
example. I think Gmail looks at your
yeah,
composition and gives some suggestion, right?
yeah. So it classifies whether your mail is promotions, or it is spam, or so on. So that is also a way for you to detect, uh, which is classification into different clusters. So moving on. As I mentioned before, technology is also very important when it comes to data science, because you are literally generating millions of rows of records every single day, and your computer, your PC, it cannot handle that much amount of data that is being generated. So, like, one small fact is that your Excel worksheet, one single worksheet can handle only up to 1,48,000 records. So what happens if you have 1,48,577 number of rows? It will not handle. So it will get stuck. I have worked with around 1 lakh rows itself, and my Excel sheet just got stuck for a simple bar graph plot. So you cannot use your system for such kind of operations. And even storage. So there could every day there could be GBs, in terms of GBs, the data that is being generated. So you might say that, okay, I'm going to get an external hard disk. So how many external hard disks can you have? So it's practically impossible to continue. So a solution for this in the industry is cloud storage, cloud computing, and so on. So what you have is you have different cloud storage examples here, which is Google Storage. Google gives you some free data storage space with your email ID itself. Also, you can buy. One of the most widely used is Amazon Web Services. They have different storage means also, and then you have OneDrive, Dropbox, and so on. And then since your data is huge, the computational power that you require will also be huge. So for which you have cloud computing that is offered by Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and so on. So it is important to know what technology is there that will help you with your problem also. So to conclude, data science requires good amount of knowledge in mathematics and statistics, at least basic programming knowledge, so that now you have machine learning codes which are just one line. All you need to do is you need to plug in the proper values in the proper places. So if you can just get to know that much, that will be more than enough for you to work in the data science field. And then knowledge related to the problem statement. So it's like domain knowledge. So whatever domain your problem statement is in, you just need to know at least minimum basic knowledge of how it works, how that particular industry works. Data is the most important part. Without proper data, all efforts are of no use. So try to have proper data with you when you want to do analysis. If you have a lot of data and more than half of the data is of no use, then you can't do a good job. So another thing is that more data and doesn't mean your problem can be solved. You need to pick the right features in your data in order to solve your problem. And analysis is key. to understanding the data. So the more you understand about your data, the more easier it becomes. And there are a lot of concepts in machine learning, so you need to pick what works for your problem. It is time consuming because there are a lot of steps involved. Every step is important, never skip a step. So if you want good results, no skipping of steps, you need to do all these steps. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this question is related about COVID-19. Okay.
Okay.
So, by providing the history data of COVID-19,
Yeah.
is it possible to train our model to predict the exact amount of people will be affected tomorrow or day after tomorrow?
Um.
Is it possible?
To answer your question, yes and no. So, see, first of all, whatever data that is available, it is already done to an extent in terms of saying that what is the transmission rate, what you say, call it as transmission rate. So, from the data that was generated in China, the transmission rate that they said is anywhere between one person can affect between 3 to 5 people. So, not just in data science, there is a model which I even went through, which is called SIR model. You can Google it. I can even send you some links. So, what the model gives you is basically you have it is actually related on a fixed population, and it will say that on day 0 or the first day you have some population that is affected out of the total population. With the transmission rate, the next day how many people are going to be affected and so on. So to answer your question, yes and no, because as far as I know, you don't have proper complete data. I hope I answered your question.
Any other questions? Yes, let's.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Can we say that, as you said, if we give input to the system, right? So can we say that the more input we give, more precise we can be?
It depends on your input. See, for example, if you are going to be deriving a function where it works only for certain values that you have in your data, and you suddenly you want to get answer for some values that is not in your data. This happens in categorical say problems. So, say suppose you have something like okay. Okay, I'll think of a example to tell you. So, okay, say for example, you're training a model which has to categorize a particular person as fresher or experience level 1, experience level 2, and so on. Experience level 1, and you have trained the model, so it will give you answers in terms of fresher or experience level 2 and experience level 3. Now, if you give inputs, which actually you want answer as experience level 2, say if you've trained over say 10,000 rows, but none of the row has experience level 2, then there is no use.
Okay. Yeah.
So you'll have to go back and teach the model how to do it. Actually, there are some models now, there are some machine learning concepts, like the AI concepts, where it learns on its own. But then, in order to do that, you have to be able to give in feedback to the model, feedback to the machine, for it to learn from or learn something.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions?
Hello.
Yeah.
See, you said no, the model we need to scrap down if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Then we should start with the new model, right?
Yeah.
So how can we come to no conclusion that this model is not good?
Okay. So that is where you have the testing set. Say, suppose you have 100 rows worth of data with you, which has, all this is the example that I'm giving you is in with respect to supervised learning. So what you do is that, so out of 100 rows of data, say you take 70 rows for training. So whatever is there in the 70 rows should not repeat in the remaining 30 rows, right? So now for the 30 rows also, you already have the output answers. After you have trained, you're plugging these 30% values. So that model is going to generate some other values, right? So you're going to compare. So when you compare out of all the values that are generated, how many values are actually matching to the original values? So say, depending on your problem statement, you're going to say if more than 70% of the values match out of the ones that are tested, then I'm going to consider my model as good. If less than 70% match, then I'll have to go back and retrain. So that is how you see. So with what I worked, it was like 100,000, hundreds of millions of rows. So there, and we didn't have good raw data also. Our raw data was full of flaws. We spent more time actually correcting the raw data than on the training and testing part. Uh, did you?
Yeah. I got it.
Yeah.
Saurabh, you had a question?
Saurabh, you had a question? Saurabh?
I think his mic has an issue.
Yeah, okay. I think.
Yeah, okay. No, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, no, my question was about the thing is when you talked about the rain example, right?
Yeah.
So you have data about all these things, and
Yeah.
based on that, you and versus rain, right? I mean, and then
Yeah,
you have this
yeah.
historical data, and based on that, you want to make predictions.
Yeah.
Now, will this model construction only involve using this historical data, or will we use some kind of physical input? Because there are already climate models and stuff, right? These differential equations.
Yeah.
So do you?
See, I just gave example of rain, so
Okay.
not exactly how it works. So I had worked with something called as shoppers related data. So there are so our scenario was that we wanted to predict if a particular user was going to buy a particular product or not.
Okay.
So for which what we had to do is we had to depend only on historical data.
Okay.
Right. So we were saying that there could be some users who are buying a particular product on a weekly basis.
Okay.
There could be some users who are buying the product, once in a month, or somebody who buys it every alternate month. So we had to predict for the next immediate week based on the data that we received for previous week. So now the scenarios that we considered was that somebody is buying every week or once in a month or once in 2 months and so on. So what we did was the highest that we went was for up to 6 months. So our model was trained over a period of 2 years, but taking scenarios like the user is buying every week to once in 6 months.
Okay.
So we had multiple models that we generated and we kind of integrated those models, and then that is when we got an answer. So yeah, most of the time when when you are generating a model, if it is just strictly supervised learning, is through historical data. So,
Okay.
so like I said, machine learning also has a lot of other concepts that are coming up, which takes some concepts from supervised learning and then some from unsupervised learning and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, related to Saurabh question, I want to
Yeah.
extend the question.
Yeah.
That means the model cannot fix. It keep on varies.
Yes.
Means what would be the life of the model?
Again, it depends on the problem. So in our case, we could use the model for about, since we had done it for like 2 years, past 2 years, we had so many different types of data points. Like we had a lot of users and a lot of different behaviors for among those users. So we already had different data points. Say suppose we had only 6 months worth of data, then maybe I couldn't have used it for more than 2-3 months. But then again, I would be guessing. You know, it depends on the problem and depends on your data.
It is work on data scientist experience, or do you have any testing for the models of life of the model?
I'm not really aware of it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Vibha,
No, this supervised learning is implemented using a neural network, right?
Supervised learning need not be with neural networks. So, neural network is actually related to unsupervised learning than
Okay.
supervised. So neural networks is something like, see, I gave you the example of the word present. So the word present could be connected to presenter, presents, presented, presenting, and so on, right? So that is,
Okay.
it's one word that is connected to many other different forms of the same word. So another example I can give you where neural network could have been used is like, say when you type on your smartphone, it gives you predictions for the next word. So when you type good, my phone suggests morning, night, and luck. So it says either I want to choose good morning or good night or good luck. It could also be good afternoon, good evening. It could also be good book. But so the word good is associated with, or it is mapped to many other words. So the next immediate word that I could use after good are these things. So which one
No,
do you
but
want?
even for supervised learning, there is some data structure at the background, right? There is some backbone to this, which is being trained.
In supervised, yes, everything has a algorithm behind it. But see, in supervised learning, it's more in terms of a function that you can easily see. But in unsupervised, you don't know what exactly goes behind it. Like, at least I haven't still figured it out. And there are so many concepts in unsupervised machine learning. It says you have k nearest neighbor, you have k mean, and so on.
So, like usually, like a first example when somebody learns something like neural networks, right? It's something like this character recognition thing or number recognition, right? 0 to 9, these numbers, and you implement a small neural network, and then you train it with lots of examples, and then it's able to identify the numbers between 0 and 9, written in handwriting or whatever.
Yeah, could be big. Frankly, I'm not worked on unsupervised learning, so mainly worked on.
No. Okay. No, I was just saying that this, like,
Yeah.
even in supervised learning, we are using neural networks. In
Need not-
unsupervised learning, there is more stuff on top of that, I feel.
Yeah, so see, in supervised, you need not learn, you need not implement neural network. So the reason is that one easy example is your linear regression. So linear regression is based on equation of a straight line, right? So
Yeah, but that's not really machine learning, right? That's just
it
I don't
is.
know.
It is.
Okay.
Learning.
Saurabh,
See,
Saurabh.
when you say equation of a straight line, you are just considering one variable as x. Now consider n number of variables in place of one variable.
Okay.
So it's more like you're using multiple linear regression and not just a simple linear regression. And then even in multiple linear regression, what happens is some of your features that you've chosen is not in numeric form. So it will be in categorical form.
Okay.
So those categorical form, there is a method to convert it into numeric form so that you form an equation or you form a function which can be applied later.
Okay.
Saurabh, I wanted to
So-
comment here. Saurabh.
Yeah.
So in supervised learning, maybe one typical candidate is like you have a Markov process regime. So you're assuming that the process happening is according to a Markov process or a martingale. But in unsupervised, you just don't know. It can be multiple processes, and you don't have a set pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think because it's 1 hour almost, let's clap for the speaker before many people leave. So unmute yourself and clap for the speaker.